Hi there, I'm Alicia Lynn Diaz. I'm a transformational healer and the creator of the Enlightened Body System. Today I've got an interview for you with the legendary Dr. John Douillard. Dr. John Douillard is the author of the controversial but very potent book called Eat Wheat, and he's a renowned Ayurvedic practitioner running lifespa.com out of Boulder, Colorado. In this interview, Dr. John is going to share with us about gluten intolerance, where it came from, and why restrictive diets are not the answer. He's also going to talk about gut health, how we lose it, and how we can get it back. And he's also going to give the science behind the techniques that I use in my 21-day gut reset, where I walk my students through the Enlightened Belly program and how to regain gut health and vitality and energy. So get your free training to that in the description below this video. Without further ado, welcome to Dr. John Douillard. Today we're talking with Dr. John Douillard. And as you know, I felt really called to put this summit together to help you harness the power of your mind, your emotions, and your spirit to create radical self-healing. And today, Dr. Douillard is going to share with us the mind-body-spirit connection to digestion and how we can use this as an entry point to gut healing. So to give you a little background, Dr. Douillard is a globally recognized leader in the fields of natural health, Ayurveda, and sports medicine. He's the creator of lifespa.com and the leading Ayurvedic health and wellness resource on the web with over 700 natural health and fitness articles and videos proving ancient wisdom with modern science. Dr. John is also the former director of player development and nutrition advisor for the New Jersey Nets NBA team. He's the author of 6 books, a repeat guest on the Dr. Oz show, and featured in Women's World magazine, Huffington Post, Yoga Journal, and dozens of other national publications. He's the director of LifeSpa, the 2013 Holistic Wellness Center of the Year in Boulder, Colorado. Dr. Douillard, you are truly a master in this field, and it's such an honor to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'd love to start today getting a little bit of your story, how you got started on the mind, body, spirit medicine path.
Gosh, I think it was 1980, and I heard the word Ayurveda, and I sort of just fell in love with that word. I was in chiropractic college studying acupuncture at the time, and I just sort of had this fascination with a whole kind of Vedic system of medicine. What could that be like? And I dabbled and studied a little bit the best I could, but in 1986 I was fortunate enough to get to go to India for about a 3 or 4 week vacation to try to study Ayurveda. And when I got there, I was able to very quickly. My sister was at one of the ashrams in India, and she said, "You can stay here and hang out with me." And I hung out with her for a little while, and on that ashram there was a hospital, an Ayurvedic hospital, and they had during that exact time I was there, there's about 100 plus Ayurvedic doctors in a conference kind of reviving Ayurvedic medicine to its kind of original roots, because it has kind of gotten usurped by Western medicine and was becoming kitchen medicine, and they wanted to revive it. I just happened to kind of show up at that time, and I sort of at the right place at the right time, and one of those doctors became my teacher, my very best friend. I ended up staying, instead of 2 weeks, I stayed 1.5 years, closed my practice. I had a practice in Boulder, Colorado way back then, and sort of changed my world. I was going in one direction, and next thing I knew, I was living in India studying Ayurvedic medicine. I was there. I met my wife there. She was from Santa Barbara, but met her there and ended up getting married. And she was pregnant and throwing up on the streets of New Delhi, which wasn't very wonderful. Or at least she didn't actually throw up. I should clarify. She fainted once on the streets of New Delhi, which was bad. And then I met Deepak Chopra over there, and he was just starting a center in Massachusetts. And he said, "Why don't you come back and run my center and co-direct that with me?" And that's what I did for 8 years. And with Deepak, I was traveling around lecturing with sort of like his little sidekick. And then wrote a couple of books and was teaching medical doctors Ayurvedic medicine. That was one of my main jobs. And forced and thrown into this idea of teaching, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And I think the best way to learn something is to be forced to actually have to teach it. And so that's how I got started in Ayurvedic medicine. And Ayurveda is the ultimate mind-body system of medicine, because from the Ayurvedic perspective, there is no separation between mind, body, and spirit. They're the same, and you can't look at them as separate. And we're only beginning to move into a quantum view of the body versus a Newtonian, view of the body. But so we're definitely in a place where I think Ayurveda, after thousands and thousands of years, is really beginning to be understood. I mean, what I do for a living is I take ancient wisdom of Ayurveda and I prove it with modern science and write articles about it. And that's the cool thing, is what we're finding, and there's so much research that's being done that are proving these ancient principles. And when you put it together, you have ancient wisdom and modern science together, it's pretty cool. You have something that's 1,000 years old, it's been practiced for 1,000 years old or longer, and you have science to back it up. That's pretty cool. If you have just science, well, you can find studies, hey, coffee is good, coffee is bad, soy is good, soy is bad. You can find science to prove sort of whatever you want, depending on who's paying for it. But when you have a lot of thousands of years of time-tested wisdom and the science, that's what I like to bring to the table and share with folks. And that's what we do here at Life Spa.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's such a deep and vast science. And I love that your path has been so much about merging the two, the ancient wisdom with the modern application. So what would you say then is the connection with digestion? And I know a lot of Ayurveda and even functional medicine that's been really popular today talks about gut health, but what's the connection with the mind, emotion, spirit in connection to the gut health?
Well, the interesting thing is that thousands of years ago in Ayurveda, they talked about a lifestyle that was what's called sattvic. A sattvic lifestyle means a kind, giving, loving lifestyle. You care for others, you're nonviolent, you don't hurt anything, and that lifestyle was shown to support longevity. In fact, there's a whole science in Ayurveda called rasayana, which is the study of longevity. And rasayana, where the word comes from, is the study of the lymphatic system. Now, here's a crazy thing, that the lymphatic system is the largest circulatory system in our body. It's the #1 system we treat initially in Ayurvedic medicine. It's been treated that way for thousands of years, and we have really very little knowledge about it at all. As most people think of the lymph as, when you're getting, a colonoscopy or some risk of cancer diagnosis is when we think of the lymphatic system. But it is the largest system of our body. We don't know much about it. We don't have a way to measure it, but more and more research is beginning to come in. It's fascinating. I'm just finishing a free ebook on the lymph that we're going to post here really soon. It's just got all the new science. But here's something interesting. About 7 or 8 months ago, they found that there are lymphatic system vessels in the brain called glymphatics that they never knew existed before. Up until that point, there were no vessels in the brain that drained the brain at all. The brain was devoid of any lymphatic system, and so was the central nervous system. And then 8 months ago, they found these anatomical structures that they didn't know were there before. It's sort of amazing, right? That you can think that in this day and age, they found something anatomical, structural in the body that they didn't know existed before. I mean, how could that happen? Well, it turned out that the blood vessels that go into the brain, there's a little tiny sleeve on the outside of the blood vessel, a little tiny sleeve, and toxins drain through that sleeve as lymphatic waste removal channels for the brain and the central nervous system, to the tune of about 3 pounds of toxic plaque and other toxic chemicals, mercury, things like that, every year. 3 pounds, that's the weight of your entire brain, basically, every year dumped out of your brain. This revolutionary, groundbreaking research has connected a lot of dots of science that have been talked about for years and years and years. For example, there was a doctor in the 1900s. He ran a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast, the biggest hospital on the planet. Everybody sent their sort of not so healthy, psychological ill patients to this place. And he would cut off their toes and their fingers and pull their teeth and pull out their ovaries and do all these weird, barbaric things. But they would get better. And no one understood how they got better, but this was his thing. Well, now with this research, they have linked that when the lymphatic systems around the central nervous system are congested and the brain is not draining well, it's linked to infection and autoimmune conditions and Alzheimer's disease, cognitive function, brain fog, inflammation in the body. Inflammation is what everybody's talking about. Now we know the reason for the inflammation is that the brains are clogged. When this guy, Dr. Cotton, was chopping people's toes off, he was taking infected parts off their body. Obviously, they were only infected. They weren't good toes. They were the bad toes. And he would chop them off, taking a big chunk of infection out of the body, taking a huge stress off the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system takes care of the immune system. It's the home of the immune system. It drives the immune system. So here we have a system now, the lymphatic system, that is the carrier of your immune system. It drains your brain, supports cognitive function, mental clarity, mood, anxiety, depression, infections, autoimmune conditions. How many people complain in our chronic disease culture of autoimmune conditions? How much money is spent bankrupting our medical system because of autoimmune conditions? Now we're linking them to bad drainage, something Ayurveda knew thousands of years ago. This is like mind-boggling, groundbreaking information, you know? And here's the more important part, that there are absolute strategies that have been in place for thousands of years to get your lymphatic system to be cleaned out and drained out. And guess where your lymphatic is mostly concentrated in your body? Around your intestinal tract, around the gut, as what's called the gut-associated lymph, and around the small intestine, as what's called the mesenteric lymph. So this is the lymph around the body that drains all the yucky stuff. Now here's an interesting thing. You eat something like wheat, and I have a book out called Eat Wheat, and it's all about the scientific proven way that we can reintroduce wheat and dairy back into our diet. And we blame wheat and dairy and soy, and well, soy is another issue, scratch that. But other foods that are hard to digest, and we just blame those foods. So we start taking all these foods out of our diet. And the reality is that a lot of these foods, like wheat, for example, there's science that shows that we've been eating it for 3.4 to 4 million years. That's a lot of years. Now, I'm sure you and everybody else has heard, wait a minute, I heard we only been eating it for 10,000 years. Well, no, that's not true. We have been making bread for 10,000 years and cultivating wheat for 10,000 years, but we're grinding wheat for 30,000 years, and we've been picking wheat berries off grasses for 3.4 to 4 million years. When the apes came out of Africa, or came out of the rainforest, shrunk because of one of the original ice ages, and Africa turned into one big continent of tall wheatgrass and barley, full of gluten, by the way, and the entire continent was full of that. How long do you think it would take folks to figure out there were little wheat berries on there that you could actually pull off and eat? They're hitting you in the face as you're walking through the fields. You know, and you can pick an entire day's worth of nutrition from these fields in 2 hours. That's not a bad job. You sit around just eating wheat all day long, and it's a perfect food. And all of a sudden, it became a poison. Something's missing in that equation. We have 3.4 to 4 million years of genetics to eat it, and now we can't. Meat, we've been only eating meat for 500,000 years, hunting our own meat and eating it. We have way more genetics for eating wheat than we do meat. So what does that mean? Something went wrong with our digestive system. It broke down. We lost the ability to digest hard to digest foods. And I'm going to tell you why that happened. But more importantly, is when those undigested foods like wheat and dairy, proteins like gluten and casein go into your intestinal tract and they're not broken down, they're too big. Toxic chemicals like mercury and environmental pollutants and pesticides and preservatives, when they're not broken down by good bile flow and good liver function, they're too big to get into your blood, digested by your liver and processed by your liver. They're too big. So guess where they go? Your liver, your lymph, rather. Your lymphatic system collects these larger molecules that are too big for the regular digestive system, and they congest your lymphatic system. So the symptoms of the brain drain thing that everybody's talking about are really nothing more than a brain drain thing. They're not a brain drain thing. It's a toxic drainage system that's allowing undigested foods to go into the lymphatic system and congest it, and creating lymphatic congestive related issues. brain fog, mood issues, anxiety, bloating, swelling, rings get tight in your fingers, holding on to water, puffy, gaining weight. These are all lymphatic congestive, allergies, hypersensitivity reactions. Your lymphatic system carries not only the toxic chemicals out of your body, but also carries your immune system. If that immune system is stuck in traffic, it can't get where it needs to get. You're going to get a local inflammatory allergic reaction. And that's what we see happening epidemically. And that local inflammatory allergic reaction in the lymphatic system can cause and predispose us to autoimmune conditions where the immune system creates an overzealous response to these congestive, can't get the fire truck to the burning house in time. So I create a local response and we sort of do some extreme immune reactive kind of things where the body turns on itself. It's the body doing everything it can to put out a fire. It's like when the firemen come into your house and they don't use I had a couple of fires, and they don't use the doors or the doorknobs. They use axes and they chop your door down. I don't understand that exactly why they do that, but it's like emergency stuff. You break windows, knock doors down, you just fix the problem. And that's exactly what the immune system is engaged in sort of an autoimmune type of a condition. Whatever it takes to solve this problem, we're going to do it. It might not be the right thing, but it's going to save a life or postpone or extend a life. And that's what we're beginning to look at and understand. Some of these amazing therapies and understanding of Ayurveda thousands of years ago that are now being proved by modern science. That's what I write about. It's so fascinating, all the research that's coming about these connections and how it relates back to digestion. So yes, if your intestinal skin breaks down, and there's lots of reasons why it'll break down, but the lymphatic system on the outside of your intestinal tract is the drainage system for your intestinal skin. And if anything that has a drain and the drain is clogged, it's not going to be pretty, right? I mean, your lymphatic system, you have underneath all the skin in your body. So you have lymphatic vessels underneath the skin here on my hand, underneath my skin here, underneath my respiratory skin, my intestinal skin. I have an army of lymphatic immune responders. So if I get bit by a mosquito, I have an army there waiting to pounce so I don't get infected. So my intestinal tract, my respiratory tract have this lymphatic army. If that lymphatic army is stuck in traffic, can't get where it needs to go, my skin is going to build up and accumulate toxicity that it can't process, and it's going to begin to break down. Now, the intestinal skin, if you took it all and flattened it out, it's as big as a tennis court, which is really weird. Let's just say that you took all the skin of your intestinal tract and flattened it all out and covered a tennis court. That's sort of weird, right? Hard to think that your intestinal skin, Alicia, could actually cover an entire tennis court.
It's huge.
I'd love to see that someday. In reality, not yours, but it's hard to imagine, right? There's some new studies say it's as big as a studio apartment, but still it's crazy large. When we age, there's good science now that shows that the intestinal skin, the quality and the health of the intestinal skin, the quality and the health of the mesenteric lymph on the outside of the intestinal skin, and the quality and health of the microbiology are all directly linked to aging. So as we age, that tennis courts become sort of like a badminton court, and then smaller and smaller and smaller. And you can see it in people as they age. They're not delivering the nutrients to their skin as they once were. They're not as vital as they once were. You know what I mean? They start to shrivel up, joints begin to ache, the body's not getting the good stuff in or the waste stuff out as well as it could. And these are the issues that we have to deal with at a fundamental level when we deal with health. We can chase the symptom, the arthritis symptom, and give them something for their joint pain, for sure, if you need it. And there's really great herbs that do that. But the cause of that has to be addressed. Nobody asks that question. Why did my joints get congested? Well, if the blood was coming in and the lymph was not coming out and the drains were clogged, the drains can't drain the joint's going to not be able to get the good blood in because the waste can't get out, and now we have a congested joint. Over time, that joint's going to inflame and irritate and cause arthritis. And eventually, create an autoimmune response, like a rheumatoid arthritic response, where the body starts to eat away at itself. So these, in Ayurveda, we always say 85% of all problems start in the digestive system. So the health of your intestinal skin, the health of your lymphatic system, the health of your microbes determine how well you age and your longevity. Well, the Rasayana study of longevity was first and foremost a study of lymphatic drainage. If the drains are clogged in your house, bad things happen. So now we go into your intestinal tract and you have little microbes on there, millions of them lining your intestinal villi. And they are extremely sensitive to everything. If you yell and scream, your bugs feel that. If you put a cup of yogurt on the table and had really got angry at something, the little bugs would like run away and hide at the bottom of the bucket or something. They definitely respond to that stress. So it turns out that our microbes are extremely, extremely sensitive. So let me explain how that happens.
Wow, Dr. Douillard has a wealth of knowledge. In the second part of this video, he's going to talk about brain fog, where it comes from, and how to get rid of it. He'll share his refreshing perspective on the gut microbiome. And he'll break down how your skin is actually connected to your brain. I hope you'll join me, and don't forget to register for your free gut reset training, link in the description below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. Lots of love.